Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. Today's video is going to be my review of the new summon showcase Ardent Admirers, which starts today, February 14th, and lasts until February 21st. Now this new showcase has some limited time adventurers and Wyrmprints, since it's focused on Valentine's Day, but the new dragon Prometheus and the new Wyrmprint Entwined Flames are going to be added to the normal summoning pool. Today we'll be answering the question of whether to summon, and I'm going to go through every Wyrmprint dragon and adventurer that's been given a rate up, but I did do a pretty extensive preview talking already about the 5 stars and a little bit about the 4 stars, so if you haven't seen that video already, I'll refer you to that, and we're going to go a little bit lighter on the analysis today, focus on the build, focus on the adventurers, but less so the Wyrmprints and dragons. As always, with a new showcase comes a new giveaway, but because the showcase duration is pretty short, this giveaway only lasts for 5 days, so if you want to enter, the Gleam link is in the description below. Timestamps are on screen now, but we're going to go ahead and get in right away with the Wyrmprints. So I have all the Wyrmprints on screen now, and I'm just going to go through them one by one, talk about what I like, what I dislike. So first off, we have To My Beloved, which is a 3-star Wyrmprint that grants skill prep. Not a big fan of this because you can get higher amounts of skill prep on higher rarity Wyrmprints. And as of now, 3-star Wyrmprints just don't have the stats to really be competitive. It also has an identical ability to 2 other 3-star Wyrmprints that already exist, which is also pretty disappointing. It just makes them harder to fully unbind. Really, the only relevance I think these Wyrmprints will have is if there's some kind of rarity gating once we get a dual Wyrmprint system, or maybe if there's some kind of Wyrmprint foddering that we do in the future. Otherwise, I think you should just sell this one for Eldwater. Now, the new Wyrmprint Entwined Flames, once again, this one will be in the normal summoning pool. This is going to increase your strength by 10%, or your damage by 10% rather, once you're a dragon. This one also, I think, is kind of underwhelming. You really aren't a dragon for a lot of the match, and once you are, you're already doing a lot more damage, so I just see this as a little bit superfluous. It doesn't really shore up an adventurer in a particularly important time. It's kind of like Broken Punisher, but I think Broken Punisher usually has higher percentages attached to it. So I'm not a huge fan of this Wyrmprint. I don't think it's completely useless. It might be kind of nice to hang on to for dual Wyrmprints down the road. That's generally what I'd recommend with all Wyrmprints right now because we don't know how that system is going to work yet. But in the end, I don't think Entwined Flames is really something to summon for. Destiny's Hand is the other rate up 4-star Wyrmprint. This one features Verica in the artwork and it provides recovery potency and skill prep. This is probably the best healing Wyrmprint from the gacha pool at 4-star, but if you were playing earlier in the game, you'll have something called Luis's Hobbies. That was a free Wyrmprint that provides recovery potency and it's a 5-star. Slightly better stats on that, and you could level it up to 100 for free. And what's been data mined so far of this event, we're getting a lot of free Wyrmprints, and one of the ones we'll get will also provide recovery potency of 10%, and it's going to come at level 100. So do keep that in mind that you'll probably have a better recovery potency Wyrmprint, and especially for a character like the new Hildegarde who already has 100% skill prep, Destiny's Hand isn't really that necessary. From there, we get to our 2 5-star Wyrmprints. I talked about both of these in the preview, so I do like the Chocolatiers. I think this has potential to break the game open in some ways because for high dragon fights in particular, the beginning of the match is important. You take some unavoidable damage, and having skill prep potentially allows you to mitigate that with defensive buffs or other types of skills. For the Rose Prince, I'm a little bit less high on, just because I don't really see the application of the Affliction Guard for Flame or the immediate one-use shield that you get. Now, I have underestimated shields in the past, so I think it's worth pointing that out, that there are some uses for them. They are pretty nice to have around, but for high dragons, for Imperial Onslaught, I don't really see this being particularly good. But once there are dual Wyrmprints, it could be a nice Wyrmprint as a secondary Wyrmprint, and also it could have some implications in Void Battles since we don't really know how those work yet. That's all I really want to say about the Wyrmprints. For me, I think the Chocolatiers is the standout. The Rose Prince would be nice to pick up just because it's limited to have potentially once we get dual Wyrmprints. Otherwise, everything else is unremarkable, like To My Beloved, or it's going to be in the normal summoning pool. So Wyrmprint's a little bit on the weaker side this time, in my opinion, with the Chocolatiers being the exception. Then we get to the dragons, where the two featured dragons are Phoenix at 4-star and Prometheus at 5-star. So both of these dragons are excellent. Phoenix is probably still the best dragon to have for a healer, specifically a flame element healer like Verica or the new Hildegarde, because she provides a good amount of HP and she has a very powerful healing skill. That healing skill often makes Phoenix useful in off-element content. I even used her in the most recent raid, even though we're facing off against a water boss. I still found her to be helpful to try to get deathless clears. So Phoenix is really powerful. If you don't have a copy, this is a good time to pick up one copy of Phoenix. Even if you aren't able to max unbind her, that is going to come in handy in a variety of situations, and she is good in the end game for Hildegarde, for Verica against High Midgard Stormer, even for Cerise, because Cerise is strong enough that without a strength dragon, she can still get some good clears consistently. I've even used Phoenix for characters like my Vanessa because her HP was too low to enter, and I just put a damaging Wyrmprint on her, a damage dealing Wyrmprint, and with the rest of my teammates being pretty strong, we were able to get the clear in High Midgard Stormer. So she is a really powerful HP dragon. I think that this is a reason to summon. This was something that was last featured on Naveed's showcase last year, and like I said, if you don't have one Phoenix, this is a good time to pick her up. It can be expensive to try to max unbind her though, so do keep that in mind. Next up we have Prometheus. Prometheus is a new type of dragon who increases both strength and wind resistance. So this is a brand new combination. Like I said before about Entwined Flames, Prometheus isn't limited. He is going to reappear, so you don't have to worry about that. Prometheus is definitely a husbando. A lot of you guys commented that you really like him and are in on this banner because of him, so I'm glad they're mixing up the representation on the banners a little bit more, and it's cool to see that. But in terms of gameplay, I think that Prometheus is going to be a great option to get you in the door of the High Dragon Trials, just like Phoenix in some ways, but for your attackers, for your offensive characters. Because with that 15%, once max unbound on that wind resistance, you can potentially even just bring to the table a 0 unbound or a basic High Dragon Wyrmprint. You don't actually have to go for the max unbound one if you don't want to, because that percent is enough that you're able to operate just fine with this dragon and a 0 unbound copy of that Wyrmprint. Now, I do think that he gets a lot better the more unbindings that you have. Certainly with any 5-star dragon, they do scale up in that way. But from what I can tell, in Prometheus's case, he actually gets his 15% wind resistance even in his base form. So really the only thing that's scaling up is going to be the amount of strength that he provides, and of course the amount of HP just from his level. But that strength percentage boost is going to scale up from 35% to 50%. So if you already have Cerberus or Agni, I definitely think those are going to be better long run options for you. It depends on what future content they create, but the other use of Prometheus is he is going to be much more comfortable if you're using a ranged adventurer. Because ranged adventurers have a defense of 8 instead of 10, they need a lot higher HP to be able to participate in the end game. But for someone that's an attacker and wants strength more, right now they've either needed a max unbound 60% strength dragon, or they've needed Vanessa on their team, or they've needed a free dragon like Hilda as a dragon to be able to participate in High Midgard Stormer. So for Sonoa, for Gala Cerise, any adventurers like that, the new Valentine's Ezelith, this dragon is going to be pretty nice because you don't have to invest as heavily to get their HP just to meet the cutoff with that 15% win res. That's really all I want to say about the dragons. Both of them are very solid, very good options. The whole theme of the banner, based on these dragons and based on the adventurers we'll see, seems to be to kind of finally break open this content High Midgard Stormer for people who want to do it. If that endgame content interests you and you've kind of gotten bored in the game, there's not a lot left for you to do, this is a good opportunity to pick some of these characters and dragons up and be able to take them to that challenge. So right now, Hilda is still much more gated. I feel like this is kind of the nail in the coffin of High Midgard Stormer. After this, I expect to see a lot more people coming in and taking him on. As of now, those lobbies are already pretty full and easy to clear in, so you won't be alone if that's something you want to do. But with the dragons out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the adventurers. Alright, so first up we have Valentine's Orion. He's a support type 3-star flame swordsman, and Valentine's Orion has 2 skills, Spinning Brulee and Sweet Protection. Spinning Brulee deals a spin attack of flame damage, and it inflicts burn for 15 seconds. So burn and poison got power crept a little bit by the bleed mechanic that came out during New Year's, because that ignores affliction resistance. But on the positive side, High Midgard Stormer can be affected by burn, and he's pretty much the hardest win boss in the game, so at least Spinning Brulee should work there. Then Orion's Sweet Protection increases the entire team's defense by 10 or 15% for 15 seconds, and this actually works really nicely with Orion's first ability and only really unique ability, Strength Double Buff, which goes up to 8% strength buff for 15 seconds each time a defense up buff is received. So I like that they actually made this character self-synergize in terms of their kit. He has that strength double buff, but unlike characters like Irfan, he can actually trigger it himself using Sweet Protection. So it doesn't rely on having another teammate with the defense buff. Now besides that, Orion's resistances are a little bit strange. So the first one, of course, is Curse Res. It goes up to 50%. And then he also has Curse Res in the final slot of 25%. So he's kind of like Renell. Renell is another 3-star flame adventurer with Curse Res. It's a little bit odd right now because we don't really have flame favored content where enemies inflict curse. Typically the enemies you'll face, wind enemies, will inflict stun or sleep, so this guy is probably going to be running into events sort of without any protection against ailments or afflictions. You could use the new Wyrmprint on him to give him a little bit of affliction resistance, but I'll talk about what Wyrmprints I like in just a moment. Now in terms of competition, there are a lot of other flame swordsmen. We have Marty, we have Carl, we have Naveed, and we have Yuden. So Orion makes the 5th flame swordsman, and being a 3-star, his stats are going to be lower than any of those who are 4-star or above. So Orion does have some tough competition. His defense boost, I think, gives him a unique utility. Much like Marty's shield provided him some utility, there are certain times when your teammates are going to take an attack and you want to have that defense buff ready. But in my opinion, if you have any of those other swordsmen, you don't really need Valentine's Orion. He's more there, I think, for the novelty of having a Valentine's character. Now in terms of builds for Wyrmprints, I do like playing off his defense buff in his kit, so I like the A Wish Upon the Yule Tree Wyrmprint. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know this is one of my favorites because it has healing double buff. It means that every time Orion casts his second skill, he can grant himself a regen effect. It also gives him more defense as long as his HP is above 70%. Besides that, I like Valiant Crown. Same premise, but that one has a strength double buff, which will stack with his own. So every time he casts his Sweet Protection, he's going to get a massive boost in strength. Now in terms of dragons, I think that you want a strength-focused dragon for Orion. He's a close-range attacker. Even though he's a support type with that defense buff, swords units just have to get in close to deal damage. So if you have access to Cerberus or Agni, those are probably going to be your best picks. I would say Prometheus is good, but because Orion has Curse Res, you may not want Prometheus because you might be taking Orion to some other types of content perhaps, but still I think Prometheus is a good workable option. In terms of teammates, I think any teammate who wants or appreciates that defense buff would be kind of nice. So for instance, someone like Gala Cerise, whose first skill scales off the amount of buff she has, would be a good teammate for Orion. The other positive with Gala Cerise is her own skill provides a defense buff too, so then she can trigger Orion's double buff. Other than that, if this is a character you want to take to the end game and face off against High Midgard Stormer, I definitely think you need Verica on your team. I think you want that stun cure that Verica provides. Since the new Valentine's Hildegarde, that is one of her weaknesses, is she can't cure stun like Verica can. Finally, for weapons for Valentine's Orion, both the 4-star and the 5-star elemental swords for flame just have an attacking skill. The 5-star attacking skill is a little bit better in terms of the SP cost and the damage output, so if you have the 5-star, that is probably the way to go. But the 4-star is a fine option, and really, any sword that you have, you can probably slap onto Valentine's Orion for other types of content. So for instance, I also think the 5-star sword Graham is kind of cool because that gives Orion a second way to buff his own defense and trigger his own strength double buff. Ultimately, I like Orion as a character. He has the ability to burn the enemy and then increase his own tankiness through that defensive buff, all while increasing his own strength. He's a pretty nice unit, well designed considering the limitations of a 3-star, where those resistances take up the 2nd and 3rd ability slots. Moving on from Orion, we get to our second Valentine's unit, this one, Ezelith. Ezelith is a featured 4-star. She is a flame bow user, and she has 2 attacking skills, Floral Explosion and Piercing Rose. Floral Explosion, just like Orion's first skill, can inflict burn, so that's pretty solid. It also charges quickly, especially with Ezelith's skill haste. Piercing Rose is her second skill, and this one can debuff enemy defense by 10% for 10 seconds. So that is also very solid. So much like the original Ezelith, a lot of the utility you'll get out of this character comes from that defensive debuff and the amount of extra damage that can mean for your team. In terms of abilities, Valentine's Ezelith has hits equals energy level up, so whenever she gets a 35 hit combo, she can get an extra energy level. That is pretty easy to get as an archer. She has Sun Res that goes up to 100%, which is great for the end game for High Midgard's armor. And finally, if you promote her, she's also going to get 20% of Broken Punisher. So the nice thing about having hits equals energy level up for an archer is that they have really good uptime. They can maintain pressure on the boss from anywhere on the map if you can avoid the boss chasing you down and you have teammates who are able to bait them away from you. So that makes Ezelith pretty powerful in my estimation. She can probably get her energy level up maybe once or twice to an energized state in an endgame type of fight, maybe even 3 times. Ultimately, I think that one thing that will hold her back though is her being a ranged character. It just means that the dragons that she can use are going to be more limited. It's more demanding for her to be able to meet HP cutoffs to participate in those fights. Especially when you compare her HP to Gala Cerise. She has almost 60 less HP, between 50 and 60 less HP than Gala Cerise, so it is harder for her to meet the required HP to enter High Dragon Trials. You're going to want someone like Hildegarde, that free dragon, or like I said before, the new dragon Prometheus. Those are going to be your safest options, or if you just run the fight with a Vanessa or an Elaine, then you'll be good to go as well. I like Ezelith as a character a lot, and I think that her just having 2 attacking skills, this kit will work really well in a lot of contexts of the game. Just putting skill damage on her, it'll be really solid. This seems like a fun character to do your daily avenues with, for instance, and just take out lots of enemies. And having stun res is actually relevant in that context because a lot of the rare enemies that spawn inflict stun. So if you want to get those rare enemies defeated, having stun res is kind of nice. Of course, the other comparison to make would be to the 3-star flame archer Joe. And unfortunately for Joe and all the Joe mains out there, I think that Ezelith kind of power creeps Joe. She has the ability to inflict burn, which was kind of unique to Joe before. She has her 2 attacking skills and a more diversified and more interesting ability kit, better co-ability, better stats. So sorry Joe, but I think that Ezelith just has you beat a little bit. From there, we get into the builds for Valentine's Ezelith, and I think, as I said before, a skill damage Wyrmprint is going to be a really solid option for her. I like Heralds of Hinamoto, adding some extra skill haste and skill damage. That seems like it'd work well with her co-ability of skill haste already. If you don't have that, of course, a free Wyrmprint like Plunder Pals will do wonders, or any other skill damage Wyrmprint that you have. Resounding Rendition is another one that's probably one of the most powerful. For dragons, I think that Hildegarde and Prometheus make a lot of sense on her. So I already mentioned a little bit why. It's basically because ranged characters have lower defense, so you want some extra HP or some extra resistance to try to compensate for that. With the right team composition, you could run a pure strength dragon like Agni or Cerberus without any problems though. Now for teammates, one of them right away that I should mention is Vanessa. Since Vanessa gives Ezelith that defense buff that she needs to run one of those strength dragons, and just in general, Vanessa is really good at being a close range character who can bait enemy bosses away from Ezelith. Ezelith wants as little pressure on her as possible to keep her combo count up and keep building up energy, and Vanessa can just orient the boss whichever way that she wants and away from Ezelith and allow Ezelith to keep getting in hits. Besides that, I I also think that the new Valentine's Hildegarde is an amazing teammate for Ezelith because she increases energy, so she interacts with Ezelith in that way. And Ezelith has Sun Res, so she doesn't need someone to cure her stun. She doesn't need Verika, so Hildegarde becomes a good healer. And as we'll see, the new Hildegarde skills are a little bit slower to charge, so she also appreciates having that extra skill haste co-ability from Ezelith. So finally, for weapons, the 5-star flame bow Lupus Solis increases the user's critical rate for 10 seconds, and the 4-star flame bow just adds another attacking skill. So I definitely think that although it's a little bit more budget in terms of the stats you'll get, the 4-star is more synergistic with Ezelith's kit. It's another attacking skill. It makes a skill damage Wyrmprint that much better on her. So that is what I prefer. Right now, that critical rate up on the bow is only really great on Gala Cerise because she values buffs so much. Overall, I think that Ezelith is a really powerful character. She's not quite as strong as Gala Cerise, who really is still off the charts compared to any other adventurer in the game, but Ezelith has a very good kit, so I expect to see her taking on High Midgard Stormer. And if you've already built Gala Cerise and you just want to test her out as another option, that could also be fun as well. Alright, and that finally brings us to the last new adventure we're looking at today, Valentine's Hildegarde. So Valentine's Hildegarde is the second 5-star healer in the game after the original Hildegarde. This time around, instead of the light element, she has the flame element, and her first skill, Blooming Love, restores HP to all allies, increases their energy levels by 1 stage, and applies regen for 15 seconds. This skill is a little bit slow to charge, but Hildegarde does have 100% skill prep, which mitigates that somewhat. Her second skill, Holy Protection, is even slower to charge. It grants all teammates a 1-use shield that nullifies damage less than 30% of their maximum HP, and increases their energy level by 2 stages. Note that that doesn't heal, it just provides a shield and provides energy. And to top it off, that skill is also very slow to charge. It's slower than any skill we've ever seen before that's not on a weapon, because those weapon skills are still going to be slower to charge in many cases. So that is going to take some time to actually come out and into use. For abilities, Hildegarde has Striking Strength Debilitator. So once upgraded, it's going to grant her 4 strikes a 70% chance to reduce enemy strength by 3% for 10 seconds. This seems good. I don't know if it stacks yet. I haven't seen that. Presumably it would be able to stack, but I really don't know. She has stun res up to 100%, and as mentioned before, she has skill prep that goes up to 100%. So Hildegarde is a really powerful healer. The two immediate comparisons, and I've seen a lot of people making these comparisons in the comments, are to Verika and to the original Hildegarde. As far as Verika goes, the new Valentine's Hildegarde does have higher stats, but she doesn't have any recovery potency in her ability slots. So even though she has more in her co-ability, Verika is still going to be very competitive as a healer, and Verika is set apart by the fact that she can actually cure stun. This new Hildegarde, if she's running on a team with some sleep res or other characters who don't have stun res, and you're in the end game, say you're on High Midgard Stormer, that is a weakness she has. She can't rescue or save a teammate in a dire situation. Now, one thing to note is her Holy Protection. That shield might be enough to block some stun-inducing attacks. It'll definitely be able to block the dash attack that Midgard Stormer does in that fight. So that is one factor, is your teammates may not be getting stunned as much because of that. And generally speaking, if you're bringing a sleep res character to that fight, you should have a good idea of what you're doing. You probably have a good amount of might if you're being accepted in public lobbies to begin with. And usually the onus is sort of on you to dodge, with Verika being able to save you sometimes, but not always, not if her S1 or skill 1 is not available. So that is one factor to compare her with Verika. I think they're both still very competitive. This isn't outright power creep, and Verika has 2 healing skills, which is another nice aspect of her kit, and one of those, her second skill, is kind of an emergency heal that can instantly get someone up to full health. So Verika, I think, holds her own despite having lower stats and being a lower rarity adventurer. If you already have Verika and you've invested heavily into her, from a gameplay perspective, offensive, you probably don't need Valentine's Hildegarde. Now in terms of the normal Hildegarde, her big advantage is being the light element. It means that you can take her to water content where this Valentine's Hildegarde will not fare very well. So she has her healing split as well, the normal Hildegarde, among her two skills. So her first skill just provides a normal heal, and her second skill provides a regen effect and a shield. She also has more recovery potency through her abilities, so the heals she's doing are going to be much bigger than this new Hildegarde. I think that if you have the original Hildegarde, you can take her to so much content. You could even take her to the high dragon trials if you really want to and want to go that route. So I don't think that Valentine's Hildegarde power creeps her either. And if you just want a powerful healer for a variety of your teams, and you already have the original Hildegarde, you don't need Valentine's Hildegarde either. You can't run them together because they're the same character. So all of that to say, I don't think Valentine's Hildegarde is a broken character. She is really good. If you don't have a healer yet that fills this niche, she's going to be an amazing healer for you. If you don't have a healer to take to High Midgard Stormer and you want to get into that fight, she is going to be a good option for that. Her striking strength debilitator is also pretty powerful. It gives her something to do when she's not healing. She can start to debuff the enemy. She could even get off a couple force strikes at the beginning of the fight and reduce the damage from that initial blast that High Midgard Stormer does, potentially making it easier for other teammates to meet the cutoff on that. Ultimately, I think that Valentine's Hildegarde has a lot of good uses. It just comes down to want versus necessity. So she's a really pretty adventurer, really beautiful artwork, a lot of appeal, I'm sure, to people out there. So if that's the reason that you want her, you're going to be happy with her. She's going to be a great adventurer. Hopefully she'll have a good story in Valentine's Confections. If you already have a Verica though, and you're looking at a gameplay perspective, you don't really need Hildegarde in my opinion. Verica is going to be just fine for you. But with those comparisons out of the way, let's take a look at some builds for Hildegarde. So one option, if you're on a budget, is to just give her a recovery potency Wyrmprint, one of the free Wyrmprints like Luisa's Hobbies I've mentioned earlier in the video. That is not a bad choice at all, even though in her case it only works for her first skill. Because she already has skill prep of 100%, she doesn't really need more through her Wyrmprint, so you might as well give her some extra recovery potency. Now another option you could go with for Valentine's Hildegarde would be to give her some skill haste, because her skills do take a while to charge. You could try to speed that up with something like Lunar Festivities. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend spamming a healer's Force Strike, but in her case, because of Striking Strength Debilitator, you actually might want to. So for something like Lunar Festivities, it's going to increase her damage output a little bit on that Force Strike, and it's going to make those Force Strikes build up your SP a bit faster. As far as dragons go, Phoenix is going to be the go-to dragon for this Hildegarde if you want to run her as a healer. Great that Phoenix is available on the same showcase, so if you really go ham and try to summon for Hildegarde and don't get her right away, there's a good chance you'll pick up some Phoenixes along the way there. If you want to go with a more offensive kit, that is a possibility. You could run someone like Cerberus or Agni on her, and what you could do is actually save the Energize effect that she's building up over time through her two skills for your dragon skill and power up the damage that your dragon skill deals. Now this is something I really don't recommend most of the time, but there are DPS Vericas out there, and if there are DPS Vericas and Hildegarde has more stats than Verica, it stands to reason that this could actually work for Hildegarde too. Hildegarde already has a little bit more of an offensive oriented kit with her Striking Strength Debilitator and her skill prep compared to Verica's just recovery potency, so I do think this could be a fun option if you want to play off her energy. After that, for teammates, I've mentioned them already in the video, but Gala Cerise is going to be an amazing teammate, and I also think that Valentine's Ezelith, like I said before, would be an amazing teammate. Both of them provide extra skill haste, and for Gala Cerise, she also likes having extra buffs, so that shield, the energize, the extra regen. I'm not sure that all of these actually buff her skill. I know the regen will certainly do it. I think that a full energy stack will do it for sure, but I'm not sure if the shield does. But in any case, that was already the icing on top of the skill haste. Finally, for weapons for Valentine's Hildegarde, I do think the 4-star staff Arc Voyager, which heals the team member most in need, is going to be generally better for her. She'll have immediate access to that, and it is great in a pinch when a teammate is on low HP. It can pretty much bring them up to full. The 5-star staff, Staff of the Red Emperor, it increases the user's recovery potency for 5 seconds, but Hildegarde's only recovery skill is her first skill. Her second skill doesn't actually heal, so that is why I think think that's a little bit worse. You could also consider the 3-star Flame Staff if you just want to give her an attacking option. That could be kind of fun with her energized mechanic as well. Overall, I think that Hildegarde is an excellent flame healer, but don't worry if you've already invested heavily into another flame healer like Verica, or if you already have the normal Hildegarde. This is not a must-have healer, and although this will probably be your only chance to get her for the foreseeable future, she doesn't necessarily break the game open in any brand new ways. She has an interesting kit. I think the energized mechanic could work really well for her, but at the end of the day, she is just a powerful healer, not a game-breaking healer. Looking at the showcase as a whole, ultimately, if I had to give this showcase a score, it would probably be a 6 out of 10 though. I think the adventurers and dragons are all excellent. I like the chocolatiers, but the other Wyrmprints really don't do a whole lot for me at this point. That said, I think the determining factor on whether you should summon on this or not has to be whether or not you have Phoenix. If you are a free-to-play or low-spending player, she is a dragon that can get you through a lot of content. And so I do think that if you haven't gotten her yet, this is a good chance to pick her up and round out your flame team to a certain extent. We don't really need a flame team for the Valentine's Confection story event, and expect more in a video on that event tomorrow. But for now, everyone, that's going to do it for this showcase review. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of all these characters, everything featured on the showcase, in the comments below. I wish you luck with all of your summons. But for now, take care everyone, have a happy Valentine's Day, and I'll see you next time.